This is my English classic novel vlog. The novel I chose was West Side Story by Irving Schulman. West Side Story is a tragic romantic with both action and drama. The writing style of the book is poetic and also has musical elements and often refers to Shakespearean themes. West Side Story is a retelling of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and takes place in the 1950s New York City, telling a story between two rivalry gangs. In the story, the Jets, made up of white American youths, and the Sharks, made up of Puerto Rican immigrants, disagree more and more after Tony, a former Jets member, leaves the gang to contemplate his purpose and what he's meant for. When both the Jets and the Sharks attend a town dance, Maria, the sister of the leader of the Sharks, and Tony dance together, and it riles up both gangs and causes chaos. The gangs meet together at a coffee shop and agree to fight it out, and meanwhile, Tony and Maria confess to falling in love, and Maria wishes for Tony to stop the rumble and make peace between the two gangs. Bernardo, Maria's brother and the leader of the Sharks, only gets madder and madder and starts beating on Tony. Bernardo then pulls a knife on Tony, and Tony's best friend Riff, who's the leader of the Jets, tries to get in the way to stop him, and Bernardo ends up killing Riff. And out of anger and sadness, Tony takes a knife and kills Bernardo. When the police show up and everyone runs, a member of the Sharks lets out that he's looking for Tony and he has a gun. And while Tony goes to see Maria and beg for forgiveness, everyone is looking for Tony either to protect him or kill him. When the Sharks member finds Tony, he shoots and kills him, leaving Maria to mourn twice as much. The main characters in the novel are Tony, Maria, Bernardo, and Riff. Tony is a romantic and idealistic character. When he left the Jets to distance himself from their violence, he fell in love with Maria, and despite their social and cultural barriers, and he's an overall naive and well-rounded character. Maria, the brother of Bernardo, the leader of the Sharks, is a very innocent character, with her brother always keeping an eye on her and never letting her out of his sight. She's very kind and naive and only wishes for everyone to get along and for everything to be beautiful. Riff, the leader of the Jets and Tony's best friend, is a loyal friend and doesn't judge or hold it against Tony when he leaves the Jets, and still considers Tony his best friend, though he's very hot-headed and has a short fuse when things don't go his way. Bernardo, the leader of the Sharks and Maria's brother, is a very protective character, whether it be over his sister or his girlfriend. He's always ready to protect his sister in an instant, and is very proud of his heritage and won't let the Jets make him feel any different. Some symbolism in the book is the rumble scene. In the rumble scene, and it is an example of how hatred and violence can spiral out of control and result in tragedy. In the rumble scene it's a symbol of how unresolved conflict can escalate. In the rumble scene, the two gangs come together, but not to fight their differences, but to grow farther apart, especially with how it ends. The scene is also a symbol of how conditioned their mentality is to win or die trying. The whole rumble scene had no point. They were simply fighting over disagreeing with each other, resulting in many deaths. Irving Schulman had many influences to his novel, including Shakespeare, real-life gangs in the 1950s, racial tension, and his own background. West Side Story is often looked at as a reimagining of Romeo and Juliet, recreating the theme of doomed love and conflict. Irving Schulman grew up in New York and experienced New York, which gave him an understanding when creating his characters. When Shulman was writing his novel Racial Tension in America was High, and with all the civil rights movements going on in the early 1950s, they likely influenced his writing. Shulman was very interested in the immigrant communities in New York City, especially the young people caught in between the cultures. In the novel, Shulman portrays the tension between the teens and how difficult it was for them to be disregarded. Shulman also portrayed in his novel the youth rebellion and the conflict in generations, and in West Side Story, the youth rebelled against a world where they were offered very little opportunities, which led to involvement in gangs and lots of violence. And it shows how youth can feel alienated in a world that offers very little answers. The first theme in the novel is violence and the consequences of it. Violence is a very big theme in West Side Story. It's not only the response between the tension and between the races, but it's also an expression for the youth in the novel. In the novel, the tension between the two gangs grows more and more. In the Rumble scene, it's just brutal. The Jets and the Sharks hate each other throughout the book, but in the Rumble scene, it really just shows how deep the hate goes and the nature of gang violence. In the novel, the teens use violence to express themselves. When the Jets are angry at the Sharks, they talk about what they're going to do to them because of how angry they are. And at the end of the novel, when everyone gets killed, Bernardo killed Riff because he was so angry, and Tony killed Bernardo because he was so hurt, and everybody gets death as their consequence for violence. In the novel, another big theme is the need and want for belonging. From the beginning of the story, when a girl is begging the Jets each time to be let into their gang, until the near end when Riff is begging Tony to show up and be there for his second family. Whether it be immigrants or poor working class boys, the novel shows a theme that everyone has to belong or they feel like they don't have a purpose. The connection to my life is that I see lots of violence in my generation, and from people my age fighting or threatening others or even casually threatening themselves. And we see it in movies and on the news and all the consequences people get for it. I see the theme of belonging when I look at all the different cliques at lunch, or when someone feels or gets left out, it tears them down. And the need for belonging is everywhere when really it's not belonging that's important. And that concludes my vlog.